too strong. Yeah, I think, yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you, Doctor? Good?
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Jimmy.
Shall I try just to see if I can share my screen just real quick? I mean, it should be no problem because I have the...
Can you share? You can try it right now. Okay, wonderful.
Working?
Yes. You can try the full screen, please. Oh, no. You should a little switch. Display setting. Right now, we saw it's a two screen now.
Okay, don't worry. I know I will just switch the screens. So great.
Okay. Let me start right now, and it's 8:30 local time in Estonia. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to be here. I am Qin Peng. I'm in Estonia to attend the OGP 2023. It's my full OGP meeting. By my experience, I think it's a good meeting for the open government. And because I attended a COP meeting, COP means Counterparty of the UNFCCC. And they have the meeting every year, and every year one is different country hold the UNFCCC to talk about the climate change. And actually, in every June, they will have another meeting in Bonn to talk about climate change issues. And however, about the open data, open government, OGP, it's just 2 year one time. So it's a very interesting meeting about that. Although not every country are the OGP member compared to the UNFCCC, but by my experience, it's still a kind of the meeting combined with the government official and also the private sector and also the other to join. So today, I try to talk to the OGP, but actually our side event, I hope it can be in their meeting room, but all of the meeting room is overflow booking. So I rent a room in the hotel in Estonia, and so I invite some speaker, and we have speaker here and also some speaker online, and we welcome all the speaker to join. So today's topic will be about balancing data application governance and assessment in Asia. And in our today, we have 3 major talk. Actually, another talk is from Japan. The first talk will be from the EU DG Connect, and because what we know, the DG Connect, European Union always make forward about the data policy and everything. And Gio Pira, and I know him for long times. And it's my honor to invite him again to talk about the issue. And I remember I visited Luxembourg, his office, maybe 9 years ago, about talking about the data policy. And I'm very thankful because Taiwan and also lots of Asian countries get the insight from the EU about the data policy. And the second speaker is from the OECD. OECD, because recently we totally get in touch during the AODP in Bangkok this year. The OECD site, they give me some idea about the data-driven, especially the data, our data index about that. We are very interested about this kind of index. And the third topics will be about the global data barometer. And I remember I'm also the reviewer of the global data barometer for Taiwan. And we have 2 speakers here. And one is Silvana. She is the director of the global data barometer. Another is Emily Manuel. She is a regional manager for Asia Pacific of open ownership. So they will talk here. And later on, we have one speaker from Tokyo University, and he's Noboru, Professor Noboru, and he will talk about the data application and governance in Japan. Actually, I know Noboru-san for a long time, and he is very active for everything. So it's my honor to invite a lot of the speakers here. And here we also have another guest from the CK, Jakai. Jakai I will later introduce him because he's also a data scientist in Taiwan and also in Asia. He attends lots of the hackathon and the global data things. So today, maybe I give my floor to the Geo Pillar to talk about the data policy about the European Union, especially the EU DG connector. Okay, Jerry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jimin. I will share my screen now.
Not yet, please.
It's coming. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, please.
So thanks very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here with you and learn something about Asia. But since the event is taking place in the European Union, I will also tell you something about how things are in Europe right now. I work for the European Commission in a service based in Luxembourg, and our job is to prepare policies and rules for data in the European Union. Now, we published a data strategy already in 2020 at the beginning of the current College of Commissioners. And we are basically working on having this policy put in place since those more than 3 years. What happened in the meantime? We are working on the basis of modernized Open Data Directive. We put in place Data Governance Act that looks beyond public sector data. Currently, there's a Data Act in the legislative process, which will be looking even at the B2B relationships. And we also put in place new rules for very powerful public sector data that we call high-value data sets. And all this in relation with the concept of European data spaces. This is a concept that is looking not only at the industrial data, the public sector data, but also at the infrastructure, but also rules for moving the data. But I will touch upon that quickly in a while. Very simply put, we would like to make it clear who can use what data and under what conditions. Also, doing all this, we should always look at fairness in contractual or administrative relationships. We should make sure that there are incentives kept for creating the data, and sharing more data. This is specifically a challenge when you look at industrial data, where you are working with B2B relationships that are a bit less straightforward than the traditional open data setup. The whole idea behind the strategy is to make out of Europe an important global player in the data economy. Now, if you let me start with what has been around since 20 years, these are the basic rules for publicly funded data. So we have the Open Data Directive that was modernized in 2019, which basically says that if you have some publicly funded data that is accessible in member states, then it means that such data can also be taken and used for some new purpose. So the accessibility is generally something that member states deal with, but once they decide that there's no reason to keep some data closed or secret, then such data can be then reused by anyone for a new purpose. Of course, still while respecting important European values such as privacy protection. But a couple of years ago, we realized this may not be enough and that member states required some guidance as to where to start, because there's simply too much public sector data if you want to make everything available. So we decided to identify the most important data sets from the public sector, from the 6 categories that you see on the left-hand side. So the usual suspects, you will find there geospatial data sets, data from environment, from meteorology, statistics, something about companies, and also data on mobility. So these data will be available by all the member states in a similar format under very reuse-friendly conditions, meaning they will be for free, machine readable, accessible via APIs, and where it makes sense, we will also have them available as bulk download, so that you don't need to download them item by item. So this new list of datasets will enter into application in June next year. I will just show you a little example of what it looks like. For example, this is the category of geospatial datasets, and this is how they are described. We are speaking about administrative units, geographical names, addresses, buildings, cadastral parcels, and then some data from agricultural policy on agricultural land. And each time the data set is described, it's described what it should contain, and there is also information about available formats and metadata. So this will be the very friendly, reusable public sector data. However, public sector data is not the only available data out there. That's why the Commission has come with another piece of legislation called Data Governance Act. It was adopted last year, and it will enter application very soon, actually in less than 3 weeks. And this piece of legislation is trying to liberate some other data than public and open data. So firstly, it is looking at the data that the public sector holds, but cannot make open to anyone. So there, the public sector in different member states will have to decide what are these data sets. It can be data from the health sector or some personal data from statistics. It can be data in business registries that contain some information that should not be made available to anyone. So this data has to be put on a list, and then people and companies can ask for having a look at the data without opening it to anyone. So typically you will access it in a distance. You will maybe have just access to some pseudonymized version, and then you can try to get some insight from the data without releasing the data to the wide world. The second part of this Data Governance Act is trying to put some order into the market of data intermediaries, data brokers, those companies that connect the people who have data with the people who would like to use the data. But here again, we are speaking about private B2B data, typically. Similar situation, this law is trying to incentivize data altruism, the situations where citizens or companies would like to give their data for some public good, but are not sure that their data will not end up somewhere where they wouldn't like to, or somebody will use them for some purposes they wouldn't like to have them used. So that's why there will be a consent form and some order in how you can see that the data altruism organization to which you donate your data is a trustworthy partner for your data. And lastly, there will be a European Data Innovation Board, which is an expert group currently being set up that will advise the Commission on data standards or on possibilities for further incentivizing different sectors of data economy. So that was the Data Governance Act. And the last piece of legislation I would like to mention is the Data Act. And here we are going really from the public data into the realm of B2B relationships. This Data Act is currently in discussions in the legislatory bodies of the EU, meaning the European Parliament, European Council. And here, one of the domains that is looking at is data generated by Internet of Things. So there will be new rules how you as a user can get to the data, how you can share the data from the device with some third party. In other words, how to liberate the data from the device itself and from the original provider of the device, and to make sure that this data can be then used in competitive conditions for some new purposes. In relation to this, there will be also new rules on contractual fairness to make sure that the big companies do not abuse their position and impose in unfair clauses on smaller companies concerning data sharing. So there will be a list of clauses that will be prohibited to impose when a larger company is dealing with an SME and sharing the data or refusing to share the data. Then some situations also call for reverse open data, so to speak, where the public sector would like to use some data of companies for public good. So in case there are some emergencies or the need to deal with some emergency situation like environmental disaster, or in some cases simply to improve the policies, the public policies, then the public sector under very strict conditions can go and ask for data from a private company. And lastly, this Data Act will have another look at cloud switching to liberate the market with cloud services and make sure that it is easier for us as users of cloud services to take our data and take it to a new cloud service provider. And now all the data strategy is moving around a concept of European data spaces. So you should imagine the data space not only as a geographic entity, meaning Europe, but also as a technical ecosystem of devices, but also people, infrastructure, hardware, software, the devices that are generating data, people who are generating data. But in this space, this data should move freely, and people and companies should be able to reuse the data for new purposes. And everybody should be clear as to what data is available and who can do what with the data. So these data spaces should be seen as not silos, but we are focusing on those that are the most important from the sectoral perspective. Like you can see on this slide, you can imagine agriculture, energy, Green Deal, for example. There are separate sectors, but the data should also be able to flow between these different sectors so that they could be reused in several data spaces at the same time. But everybody should know what kind of use scenario I am in and what does it mean that I can do with the data. It should be based on contracts, on rules such as Data Act that is coming up, and other applicable rules, including naturally personal data protection. So this is something that the Commission is currently supporting with its financing programs. I have to mention in this context, since we are talking about open data barometer and similar tools for measuring maturity of countries in terms of their data, that since almost 10 years we have the European Data Portal. It's a portal that federates national open data portals in Europe and harvests whatever is made available in member states. So currently we see a bit more than 1.5 million data sets that are being harvested. But the portal is doing much more than just making it easier to find European data. The portal is providing advice to data providers, to data users. We have a data academy to show some data skills. And what I want to specifically highlight in this context is the exercise that we do every year. It's called Open Data Maturity. And every year, this study is looking at how member states and some non-member states, such as the Balkan countries, or Turkey was sometimes involved, or Ukraine, how they are doing with their open data policies, open data portals, whether they are following what impact the data has and what quality the data have. So going beyond the basic question, so do you have some open data and how many data sets? No, we are now looking also at stuff like data quality and impact. So every end of the year, this study is published so that member states can compare themselves with each other and see what areas they should focus on in their open data policies. This year, I think it will be sometime mid-December that the new edition will be published. Just a quick overview where we are. The very reuse-friendly high-value data sets regulation, it will start to apply next year. So we expect that there will be more quality open data out there in the EU available. The Data Governance Act with more ways to access public sector data that is not open, that will start applying from the end of September this year. Data Act, looking mainly at B2B data sharing, that is still in the making, but we believe that the legislative procedure could be finished by the end of this year. And lastly, data spaces, that is a concept that is constantly being shaped up. I think we will soon publish another overview about the status of the development of data spaces. And over the next few years, there will still be some funding available for their development. Well, that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, for having me, and I give the floor back to Jimin.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Very wonderful talk about the EU policy right now. I have two short questions. One is you mentioned the high-value data sets, and you propose you will have a law or act about this. What it is, because in our side, we also mentioned about high-value data set, but it just encourage the government official, you can open the high-value data set. How to define what is a high-value data set? Because some unit will say, oh, we are not so high value, so we don't want to open it. So what is the legal framework about how to define the high value data set, how to push them to open the data? And the second, I know in this March, your EU, you also push for EU members, country members, they should have the data law about this. I remember that including the Netherlands, Brussels, not Brussels, Belgians, and also Latvia. The 4 countries, they should have their own data law, country data law. What's the relationship about the EU data law and their national data law?
Thank you. These are very good questions. Actually, I should start with the second one to quickly show how laws are done on the European level. So when I speak for the European level, and I say the word directive, European directive, it's a piece of legislation that all the member states, all of them, 27, they have to take this and transpose it into their own legislation. So when you have a European directive, the rules need to be then transferred by member states to their own laws. There is no choice, they have to do it. But without that transfer, usually the directive will not be effective. It really needs member states to do something. And then when I mention regulation, that's another type of European legislation. There typically it applies straight in member states. So it's almost like law, but on the European level. So it applies in every member state without the need to change their laws. So there it's very straightforward. So example of the directive that member states need to transpose is the Open Data Directive, the rules of making their public sector data available. Example of a regulation is the Data Governance Act or Data Act that will be directly applicable right away in member states. And example of regulation is also the list of high-value data sets. That list that the Commission adopted is binding. So all the member states, of course, we did it in cooperation with member states. So all the member states, at the end of the day, agreed that this is a reasonable list, that this is a good selection of important data sets that they should make available proactively under very friendly reuse conditions. So when you are asking what is the effect of the list of high-value data sets on individual countries, the simple answer is it's binding on all the countries. They have to take that list, see what data sets are on that list, and they have to make them available proactively. That was not just a guidance like we saw it with G7 some years ago, or some other organizations on the international level recommend where to start when you want to publish open data. We went a bit farther and we included this list of data in a binding legal instrument, and that will start applying from June next year.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Anyone have the questions about the EU policy, data policy about that? Maybe a short questions. Yeah. Anyone? Okay, CK, please. You can sit here.
I think one of the incentive for all these acts and regulations are to encourage or enforce the sharing of data among EU. So, for example, data authorization. So, how does it work? What is the incentive for people to share their own data into the data space, or just what is the motivation? How is the mechanism to make sure this will work?
Well, for public sector, the incentive is simple, that there are rules. With the private sector is, of course, a bit more complex. So there are different scenarios you can look at. Some of it is scenario where you share your data with for some public good, for example, for health research or for any kind of research at the end of the day. And there you need to be sure that the organization on the other side, that you can trust it, that it follows some ethical codes, that it has rules in place in terms of cybersecurity, that it is in contact with reputable research organizations. And this is, for example, for data altruism, what we are putting in place right now. That there are codes of conduct and also just simply a logo that when you will see, you will know that you are dealing with the trustworthy partners. For B2B relationships, there it's of course a bit more difficult. So where you have a company that is in a very comfortable position, that has no incentives to share their data, you need to put in place a rule that is giving the right to other companies to get access to such data. So this is something that the Data Act will do. So, but of course, while respecting things like commercial confidentiality, trade secrets, and personal data, it's a very tricky balancing act, and all these questions are still now being pondered by the co-legislators to make sure that the rules are balanced when they are put in place. Because when you speak about B2B relationships, you have to be much more careful than when you deal with public sector data, where basically there's no reason to keep them closed.
Yeah. Thank you, Pilar. And actually, in Asia, we just finished the AODP in Bangkok last month, and we found the problem is each country have different data law, and it's a barrier for the country if we want to do data business, data economy in this region. So in the future, probably we will invite you to join us to give us more introduction and the talk of cooperation in the future. I think the European Union is a good example about the data economy and the data policy in the future. Thank you, Pilar. Okay, thank you. Right now, I will give the floor to the Arturo Rivera from the OECD. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. And we look forward, by the way, welcoming you next week in Paris during the expert group on open government data. Let me just share my screen really real quickly.
Yes, it's okay.
Should be fine right now.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. Great, perfect. Just let me have here the laser pointer. Great, good morning, everyone from Paris. My name is Arturo Rivera. I am the policy lead in charge of data-driven public sector work, and work also in Southeast Asia within the digital government and data unit here at the OECD. So the purpose of the presentation today is really to share with you a little bit more details of the work that we do on open government data within the context of data-driven public sector and the broader context related to digital government. And specifically, I will be sharing some details with you about our data index, which is our benchmark instrument for open government data policies across OECD member countries and also partner countries. So a little bit more of background, which I think it's important. All the work that we do on open data, it's grounded on specific policy frameworks and legal instruments from the OECD. For the purpose of time, I cannot go into the detail of these specific legal frameworks and also policy frameworks that we have within the organization. But something that is important to mention is that, at least in this context, the most important, or one of the most relevant recommendation is the 2014 recommendation on digital government strategies. The recommendation on digital government strategies includes a specific principle on open government data, on data-driven public sector. And right now, of course, that it is quite common to speak about data governance, open data, and so on, but back at the time, it was not the case, okay? So our recommendation, the recommendation of the OECD, was a lead instrument back at the time who gave a push, for governments to pay more attention to the importance of data and building solid data governance frameworks, for the purpose of the creation of public value. And of course, more recently, the 2021 recommendation on the enhanced access to and the sharing of data, which was developed in collaboration also with the colleagues working on the digital economy. And it also addresses data governance, but also from the perspective, for instance, of the private sector. Okay, so this was a great collaboration Going a little bit more into detail of the presentation today, as I mentioned, the OECD Open, Useful, and Reusable Data, our data index, is the benchmark instrument that we have in the OECD to measure the implementation, the design and implementation of open data policies across OECD member and partner countries. We have been releasing in a biennial way our data index since 2015. This year, we are going to be publishing the next edition for OECD member countries, and we hope to do the same for Southeast Asia next year. Okay, but I will be providing more details about this right now. Something that is important to mention about the OECD Our Data Index is that it is a benchmark. Yes, it is a policy measurement tool. That's true, but it's a policy instrument. Actually, it's a policy instrument that countries can use to make decisions for their policies. And why is this important to mention? I will skip this one. Why is this important to mention? Because in the context of all the different points or issues that we assess in the context of our data index, we don't focus only, for instance, on what data is being made available through the central open data portal. So our focus is not only on the availability of the data, but we assess the data governance frameworks which are in place to support the publication of open data by public sector bodies across all the countries included in the index. But we also, for instance, assess how the community is engaged in this specific process. Okay, what you see in your screen are the three different pillars of the index. Our data index is divided into pillar 1, which focuses on data availability. The second one, pillar 2, which focuses on the accessibility of data. And the third one, which focuses more about how governments are promoting and supporting the reuse of the data by communities, either outside the public sector or within the public sector. And I am stressing this point because for the OECD, open data is not only a tool for the creation of public value for external actors, it's also a tool that could be used within the public sector, in particular right now that data-intensive technologies are growing in use by public sector bodies. In terms of pillar 1, what we measure from the perspective of data governance is the availability, for instance, of legal and regulatory frameworks that could provide the legal basis for the publication of open data. We also measure the importance of engaging users from the very beginning of the design of the open data policy. For instance, to identify which datasets might be relevant, for whatever purpose they are working on, or whatever, for instance, service they would like to develop. Okay, so engaging the community from the very beginning, it's an important issue that we measure in the context of the index. And also, as part of the data availability pillar, we measure which are the data that are being made available. Okay, in this specific pillar, we only assess what categories are being made available. We don't go that much into the detail of how the data is being available. This specific topic is measured in pillar 2. So once the data is open for public access, what we do in the context of the index is to assess, okay, now that the open data is out, we assess the formats, for instance, in which the data is being published. We are currently also going to assess if the data is being published with APIs, which would not only support, of course, users to download data and so on, but also to go one step forward. Okay, and this is important in the context of open data maturity. What we assess is actually the open data can be integrated into the business value chains of the users. And at the same time, there is also different elements, for instance, assessing if the data, if the users are also engaged to assess the quality of the different datasets available in the central open data portal, and also the soft kind of governance instruments such as guidelines and guidance and open up guides and so on that are provided by governments to support at a more technical level, maybe, the publication of open data sets in line with data quality standards within the public sector. And the third one, which I think is quite self-explanatory, is the supports, as I mentioned before, that governments put in place to promote the reuse of data by different actors. In this, for instance, we assess how they engage with actors from the civil society, from the private sector, if they have created, for instance, formal partnerships with these actors to promote the reuse of the data and so on. And something also really important is that we take a look at how governments are measuring impact, okay? Because for us, the publication of data, it's only a means towards an end. It doesn't stop with the publication, the data has to be reused. And this is fundamental for the creation of public value in the perspective of open data policies. Going more into the details of the results, what you see in your screen right now is how the data index looks like. What you see in here are the results for OECD member countries for 2019. As I said, we are in the process of publishing the next edition of the data index. And what you see on the right side are the results also for 2019 for countries in Southeast Asia. As you see, there is still a lot to be done so that all countries can get closer, at least to the OECD average. This specific component is pillar 1, which, as I mentioned before, is the pillar that measures the availability of the data. This component in here in gray is what refers to the second pillar on data accessibility. And this component in here is what makes reference to the pillar number 3, which is the support that governments provide, to promote the reuse of open government data. I cannot go again for the purpose of time that much into the details of what this means. Okay, we can spend hours, I think, speaking about this specific chart. But again, please understand that yes, the Our Data Index is a policy benchmark instrument, but it also can help, as I was mentioning before, countries to make better decisions about the design and implementation of open data policies. This is a little bit more into the detail, the results for Southeast Asia. As a quick insight that you can see from here is that where countries in Southeast Asia are lacking the most is actually to provide support for the reuse of the open government data. We have seen this trend in other regions, so it's not endemic to Southeast Asia. We have seen this this trend also, for instance, in Latin America, where once the data is out, countries stop and nothing else happens. And this comes, I think, or we believe, from the fact that a lot of the legal frameworks or regulatory frameworks supporting open data relate to open government or relate also to transparency. Okay, so at the beginning, normally what happens is that countries think that once they make the data public, they are contributing to public sector transparency, and yes, they are. But there are also some opportunities that they are missing if the data is not being reused and also integrated, as I mentioned before, into the specific value chains of these different actors. Some quick policy insights, I think, that could be useful for countries in Southeast Asia, and not only Southeast Asia, I think also, in Europe, and also Latin America and other regions that we are working on right now, is that yes, you need, of course, a clear specific regulatory framework to support the publication of open data, but at the end, the context is what will determine the success. I think the previous speaker was quite clear about it. I mean, it's not only about having the specific legislation or regulation in place, it's also about taking actions to promote the publication and the reuse of the data. As I mentioned before, also understanding that data publication is just a means towards an end. and it's not the end in itself. So it is not, open data is not only about transparency. Now, also something to mention is that it's also important to focus on quality rather than quantity. There is also a trend sometimes to release all the data that is possible. And in principle, this is a good starting point, but it's also important to discuss, with the counterparts, with the actors from different communities to identify which are the different data sets which would be of value for them. And as I mentioned before, also promoting the reuse and engagement with the data ecosystem and so on. Something where countries are still lacking, and we saw this in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, is that the development of services which could be built upon or on the open data that is being released is still lagging. And again, what we think is that now, with the arrival with data-intensive technologies, with the growing expansion, of course, of digital government policies and so on, this is going to change more because this also has a digital component in it. But still, there is a lot to be done in this regard. And most countries, and this applies also to OECD members and countries in different regions, is that only a few countries are monitoring and keeping track of reuse. There is still a lot to be done in this regard. I'm going to go a little bit quicker, just for the purpose, again, of time. As I mentioned, regulatory frameworks matter. We have different examples on how countries are using the regulatory frameworks to support the publication of open data. You have the transparency law in Mexico. You have the loi numérique, the digital law in France, which bridges open government, but also digital government. So it's a good push, for open data for the perspective of public sector digitalization. You have specific laws on open data, such as the one in Korea, and you also have, of course, the Evidence-Based Policymaking Act in the US. This, in addition, as was also mentioned in the previous presentation, in addition to European countries and all the different instruments that have been developed at the European level. Okay. The importance also of identifying if specific high-value data sets for specific policy purposes. The previous speaker already mentioned the 2019 Open Data Directive of the European Union, but for instance, also in Brazil, what they are using is to use executive decrees, given the priority to the fight against corruption in the country. So what they did was, for instance, to identify the importance of publishing in open formats data sets or public sector information, such as the declarations of interest, the salaries, and so on from public officials. Again, the importance of promoting the reuse and the collaboration with the ecosystem. We have plenty of different examples in here. What you see in your screen is just a few of them. Hackathons and datathons and whatever you want to call them are still a common practice in countries. We believe that the challenge, nevertheless, with this type of exercises is to promote the sustainability of the initiatives that are developed in the context of this specific co-creation events. So it's not only about engaging at that point, with the specific community of reusers of data of open data. It's also about ensuring that there is a sustainability of these specific initiatives, and also examples that are taking place at the local level, such as in Bratislava, in the Slovak Republic. I will skip this one also for the purpose of time, and this one. Monitoring and keeping track of the reuse cases and impact is critical, as I mentioned before. Spain, so far, is one of the few countries that is making the most to monitor and keep track of what is happening with the data once it is out. It's been for many years that the ACEDIC, which is the information for with sectoral collaboration with businesses, also at the local level in the country, they are keeping track actually of how the data is being used by actors from the private sector, and this is has allowed to give a push across different public administrations for the open data policy in the country. Again, monitor and keep track is not a common practice across OECD countries and partner countries. And looking ahead, and with this, I will finish my presentation. As I mentioned, we are currently in the process of finalizing the planning for the data collection for the measurement of the data index in Southeast Asia. We hope to have the regional edition for Southeast Asia ready in 2024. And again, what is the purpose of this? It's really to leverage the data index as a policy instrument for countries in Southeast Asia. It's also really to help moving ahead, in the region, not only with the publication of open data, but also to try to embed in the context of the design and implementation of open data policies, growing policy issues which are growing in relevance across OECD members. You see in your screen a few of them. The first of them, understanding how open data contributes, to the availability of digital public goods, the need to connect data governance and AI governance in the context also of open data. Also, something that we have seen is that with the post-COVID-19 cybersecurity measures, which, as you know, cybersecurity grew in attention after the COVID-19, we have seen that in some countries, it is no longer possible to access open data sets from outside the borders of the countries. And this, in principle, goes against, the definition of open data. Open climate data, there is a need to create a further agreement, on what data sets are fit into this specific definition. The need to bridge data ethics and open data, and I can go into details this during the questions if needed. And I think this is also important for Southeast Asia, the need to bridge open data with post-COVID-19 economic recovery in the region, specifically in the area of tourism. With this, I will finish my presentation, but you have my email in there. You have also my LinkedIn. So feel free to reach to me after this call, should you want to have a follow-up discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Rivera. Your wonderful talk. I think AODP, Asia Open Data Partnership, hope we can have a cooperation with OECD about your idea about the index and promote the policy in Asia region, because I think you mentioned, yesterday, it's open government partnership. The first day I attend lots of meetings, just like you mentioned about open climate data or climate governance, and also the data structure. But right now, I found this time about the data policy in the OGP, open government, they did not focus too much attention about this. Probably in the future, we can have more detailed discussion about this. Anyone have the short question? Okay, CK, please.
Hi, Tira, it's CK again.
Hello.
Hello, I have two questions. The first one is I totally agree with the idea of promotion of data reuse, but how do you make the link between opening certain type of data and the impact on a social or economic level? For example, if you open the housing prices data, how do you make the link for the development of the residential real estate industry? So how do you make the link between the cost and the impact? And the second question is, for countries, they are still trying to accelerate their development of open data policy. What does OECD do to help with their capacity building in the context of Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I will start with the second one. Actually, your question, the second one is quite relevant. We have a specific regional program for Southeast Asia at the OECD. We are in the context of all the work that we do on digital government. We do policy reviews, we do policy measurement, and so on. But we also have one specific component of cluster related to capacity building activities. What we do is to go to the ground. We are going to Indonesia in 2 weeks, and we are going to be in Bangkok in Thailand the week after. Okay, and the purpose of that visit is precisely to build capacities. In Thailand, for instance, our main counterpart is the Office of the Public Sector Development Commission, which you might know quite well, and also the Digital Government Agency in Thailand. In Indonesia, we also collaborate with the Ministry for Communications and Information and the Ministry for Administrative Reform. Okay, so we have networks in the region, and we go on the ground. Normally, we do this in collaboration with key counterparts, such as the OECD Korea Policy Center. And the purpose of this specific capacity building workshops is to go and to build precisely the skills or to create awareness about what's happening, across OECD countries based on the needs that the country in Southeast Asia expresses. Okay, so this is how we contribute to that capacity building. In terms of the second question, I don't want to be reductive, but there really needs to be a communication between actors from the private sector and actors from the public sector, okay? And this has to be a continuous communication and a continuous collaboration. It is difficult from the economic perspective to measure the impact of open government data. So before going into trying to give a specific economic figure, to the reuse of open data, you need to be in contact, communication and collaboration with these specific actors. What they do in Spain is precisely that. During years, they have been building this community, so they know which actors at the most, are using the data that is being published either at a central level or by local authorities. And they use this continuous communication precisely to try to understand how, they are including this into the business models that they have. So again, measuring the economic impact is quite difficult, but for me, what is also more important is to never lose the importance of having this communication in place. It might sound obvious, but in the practice, it doesn't happen that much.
Okay, thank you, Rivera, and hope we can keep in touch, and probably we have a more cooperation. Okay, our next speaker will be, yes, yeah, you two sit here. Yeah, I will talk about the people here. Okay, open data barometer now. I will welcome, we have two speakers now, and they are talking the same thing about global data barometer. Okay, Silveria, the floor is yours.
Okay,
yeah.
so
you can look at your screen. Yeah, just down.
Oh, okay.
Down,
just
yes.
And now to go back.
Yeah, this one. Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I think it's an important conversation. I love to hear about the other measurements and the other stakeholders working in the region. Once again, sorry for giving the back to you. But the camera is over there, so there's no other option. So basically, I'm going to try to be pretty brief about the barometer, and then if we have some time, we can discuss about some of the findings, in particular about the region. But first, I want to give you a general overview about what is the Global Data Barometer, why we are doing that, and what it means. So basically, just to start, the Global Data Barometer is a new benchmark, and the idea is to provide the essential data needed to better understand the state of data for the public good around the globe. The GDP is the result of the work of more than 100 researchers. We are covering right now 109 countries, and we are working with a network of regional research hubs around the world. In the case of Asia, we have the collaboration with Data for Development Asia. So they are working with us closely to work on the region. So basically, our work is based on a previous study that maybe some of you might know, that is the Open Data Barometer, that was running for almost like a decade. I mean, the last edition was a regional one in Latin America. I was running as well that edition. But in the meantime, there was an idea that the agenda was closely working on a different direction. I mean, nowadays we are thinking and talking about many other things, and probably listening to the conversation that we had this previous day in the OGP summit. We are not only working or talking about openness like we were a decade ago, we are talking and thinking about many other things, like, for example, privacy, human rights in the development of AI, data governance. There are many other topics that we need to address, and it's getting, I mean, the agenda is getting more complex, so we need more complex questions to better know what's the situation right now. So for that very reason is that in 2020, the GDP started to be designed, and we implemented that in 2021 with the results in 2022. And basically, it's drawing on primary data coming from 109 countries. You have there some kind of the basic numbers. We also use some secondary data coming from other indexes because we think we don't need to duplicate the work. We are using also secondary data from other trusted sources to generate a range of metric. The period that is assessed in this edition is mid-2019 to mid-2021. So anything that happened after mid-2021 is probably not there, and it's going to be in the next edition. So there you can see the number of countries. There were 12 regional hubs working with us, 6 thematic partners. One of them is here with me, 39 indicators, more than 60,000 data points. And inside the report and the website, you can check more than 1,100 dataset frameworks and open data initiatives. And also, I think something that is valuable is the example, the qualitative data that is inside the website that you can check about the examples of and cases of use of data. So the basic structure. The GDP is divided, first of all, in 4 pillars. We've been discussing this in all the presentations that we are talking about: governance, capabilities, availability, and use and impact. And all the indicators, the 39 that I mentioned before, are feeding these 4 pillars through the modules. We have 2 core modules that are assessing data governance and capability in a particular country, in each of the countries. And then we have thematic modules, because basically the idea of the global data barometer is going beyond open data and looking at data also through thematic lenses. So I'm gonna go into the details of our partners. There you have the partners that we have in our first edition, and basically they help us develop the modules and also review the data and also the dissemination of the results afterwards. So in political integrity module, we did that in partnership with Open Government Partnership and Transparency International, public procurement with open contracting, company formation with open ownership, that is here with me, public finance with GIFT, and land with land portal. Also, we have 2 other small modules on health and COVID and climate action. And here you can see, kind of to give you an idea about the structure with the core modules, with the thematic modules, the pillars, the indicators, and in each of the indicators you have existent elements and extent. I know it looks complicated, but when you go into the reports and the result, you can see that it's not that complicated. So basically, as I mentioned before, we work with several organizations in each of the region, and they help us hiring the researchers and training them with the material that we provided so they can collect the data through the survey. So you can see there some of them, and we can go into more detail, but basically our main partner in the Asian region was the Data for Development Asia Hub. Here are some of the results, and I'm gonna go into the detail, but if you have some time, we can later discuss some of the idea. But basically, I mean, the general thing that I can say is that the diversity of the region is also reflected in the diversity of situations and different scoring. One thing that I want to highlight, because we were talking about open data policies and governance, is that in general, regulations and laws, I mean, the different frameworks is not the strong point in the region. Again, in general, there are exceptions, but that's an area that probably as a region, there's some room for improvement. In terms of availability of data, in particular, there's some improvement to do in political integrity, company information, and climate action. There's also strong regulations on access to information, for example, as India and Indonesia and Sri Lanka. So I mean, like there's a mix of situations in the area, and maybe we can go into more detail later, but just to give you a brief overview. And basically, I want to just finish because I don't want to take too much time. Some of the general findings that I mean, coming from all the results of the 109 countries. Basically, one of the main things is that shaping data for the public good is possible. One of the things that I didn't mention before is that the scale 0 to 100 is attainable today, even though when you saw the scoring, they might seem low. We did an exercise of combining the best score today in different countries, and the general score was 95.92. So currently, you can get almost to 100. The second thing is that open data agendas are still alive, but there's a but here. They are not progressing in a linear way as they used to do a few years ago. I mean, we have more than a decade working on this agenda. In the places that these policies are alive, they are more embedded into the whole framework and also in the sectorial initiatives. But there's also, in many cases, a room for improvement and more work to do because we need to keep improving. And in many cases, the agenda is not as alive as it used to be. Capacity gaps, even though the digital divide in many places seems to be narrowing, there's still a gap in terms of capabilities and there's the skill, training, infrastructure, and that's a barrier to use and to deliver value from data. The other thing that I think is very important for the region because of the things that I mentioned before is that well-drafted frameworks helps deliver better data. In general, what we saw is that in the places where they have like better regulations in terms of data, use of data, and publication of data, the data or the quality of the data that you have in general is better. And the last thing that again is pretty important for the region and is coming in line with the presentation of OEDC is partnership. The idea of making stronger the partnership between public sector, private sector, NGOs, journalists. I mean, there are different ways of partnerships. And what we saw, in particular in some topics, like for example, contracting data. I mean, the idea we saw in different countries, including Asia, is that contracting data is something that you can find almost everywhere in kind of a good way. So the work of international organizations working on different topics with governments and with other civil society organizations is working, is giving progress in different topics. So keep working on partnerships between different organizations and on different topics is really important for the whole work and in particular for Asia. And this is just to a view about after the release of the results in May 2022. There were many repercussions in many countries. I mean, we were part of different reports, articles mentioned. We were part also of different indexes that were taking our data to work on their data. So here is just to give you an idea. There were mentions in more than 15 languages, 47 countries. So there's a mention to Estonia that is here where we are right now. They were doing pretty good, so I think that's why they mentioned that. But different topics, our partners also provided different reports and dissemination events for the results. So just to give an idea that the results are out there. And as some news, we are in October starting to work on the second edition, so more news to come. But first of all, I want to invite everybody to go into the website. Let me see if I have, yeah, there is the website. Go there, you can find the report in 3 languages. And also I think the most important part is the Open Data tab, where you can go and download all the data and do your own analysis, visualizations, and all the things that you want to do with that data by region, by topic. So there's a lot of information there for everybody to work and to do things that probably we were not even thinking at that point. So once again, thank you for the opportunity. I'm more than open to any comment, questions, not only now, but also in the following days and months. I mean, I'm happy to keep discussing about the barometer.
Thank you, Sylvia. I was the country researcher during that time. In the beginning, I thought, oh, it's quite easy. Just take me 1 or 2 days. Actually, I spent about 3 weeks. And because there were lots of the
and that was quick. 3 weeks, it was quick.
It's a full day. I make a call to the government contact person. Oh, what is this? Yeah. Who have a data? And when I say just yes or no, I should have the link. You have the reviewer to review all of our process. So I think it's a very good example to how to use the data to give the actual ranking about this. I think it's good.
Thank you. And yet our thematic partners also help us with the review of the data, because we couldn't do everything. And they are the ones knowing the particular aspects of every topic. For example, Land Portal, Open Ownership, they provided their expertise to review certain data coming from different modules. So in that sense, I mean, we took a really long time to be sure that the data that is out there is also open, so everybody can go and see something that is not right. They can tell us, because all the justifications are out there for everybody to check.
By my point of view, because I saw lots of the data ranking, open data policy ranking, and your philosophy, and you use a kind of the methodology, use manually methodology requirement set up. So by my point of view, it's more, we can see more details about the ranking. For example, we can compare OECD. Korea is the #1 in your rating. Estonia. Korea is also in Asia. Is #1. But Estonia is #1. But we can make a comparison with Estonia and Korea, and we can see the difference.
I shouldn't say that, because one of the things that we make a point is that our idea, even though you can do that, I mean, ranking countries if you want. I mean, if you go to the website, there's nowhere where we put first, second, third, and so on, because what we want to do is to be more a rating than a ranking. I mean, and we think that the strength of the data that is there is for each country, governments, or civil society to follow the improvement of each of the countries. And you can compare with other countries if you want, but we try that that's not the main point of the study. That is checking your own progress and in your own region as well. So yes, I mean, we know who are first, second, and third, but we don't want to put like the strengths of the highlight there. But you are completely right about that.
You know, in Asia, the competition
ranking
is important.
Competition.
Sometimes the ranking is high, the country level, so we are wonderful. If we are lower, we don't say that. Okay, thank you. Probably next speaker is Emily. You have a show. Please sit here.
Thank you. Thank you for. Thank you for inviting us. As Silvana mentioned, Open Ownership is a partner of the Global Data Barometer, in specifically on the company ownership module. But just very quickly to introduce ourselves, so we are a strong team of 20 women and men based across different continents around the globe, providing technical assistance to countries to implement their beneficial ownership reforms and changes. We also develop our own policy and guidance that help these governments and support the use of beneficial ownership data through technology. So far, just as far as beneficial ownership commitment, more than 130 plus countries have committed to beneficial ownership transparency. And this is the region where we are currently working. So we are working with more than 30 countries at the moment. And in Asia, Open Ownership is doing providing technical support to Indonesia, Mongolia, Armenia, and Philippines under the Opening Extractives Program and under other anti-corruption programs with UNODC. So you will see here how many countries have committed to having a beneficial ownership register, some of which are public and some of which are limited to competent authorities. So as Silvana already mentioned, we had partnered with them to design the question set for the company information module, the Global Data Barometer, where we asked the following questions on beneficial ownership. In terms of governance, to what extent do relevant laws, guidance provide a basis for collecting and publishing beneficial ownership data in companies? And in terms of availability, to what extent is company beneficial ownership information available as structured open data? So I will just quickly go through the main findings from that research from the company ownership perspective. We found in 2022, when the results were released, that not all surveyed countries have legal frameworks for collecting data. So we found that only 8 out of the 15 countries in Asia have the necessary legal frameworks to support the collection of beneficial ownership data. And then for countries where BO data is publicly available, there is a tendency to not include information on how beneficial ownership is held. We at Open Ownership find that data, if it does not show the chain of ownership, or at least point to the ultimate beneficial ownership, then it is lacking, it is not usable by the stakeholders. And third, where data isn't made publicly available by government, people have found creative ways of creating and making use of ownership data. So we found an example, for instance, in China, where they are currently doing data scraping because BO data in China is not publicly made available. The same is the case for Indonesia. Even though there is a public register on beneficial ownership, we find that that data is limited. And so CSOs do find creative ways. They search for companies and individuals and do a manual data scraping based on cross-references to other data sets. So finally, some of our insights specifically on open ownership's implementation, technical assistance to BO implementation in Asia. First, there is a general lack of awareness and appreciation of the benefits of collecting and using beneficial ownership data. So we found there's still some confusion between in trying to figure out the difference between legal ownership and beneficial ownership. Second, questions have been raised on the quality of the data that is currently being collected. So even though a country is implementing a BO public register, there have been questions by CSOs themselves on the quality of that data because they know for a fact who the beneficial owners are, but they are not being reflected in those registers. Third, mechanisms have yet to be put in place to allow access to the data by competent and law enforcement authorities. So even though the legal frameworks currently require the collection of BO data but it does not automatically translate into access by competent and law enforcement authorities. For example, in the Philippines, there is a need to still enter into data sharing agreements as a result of the Data Privacy Act. So there are certain limitations that are being put in place by data protection law that limit access to the company beneficial ownership data. And last, there is limited evidence of BO data used by these authorities and the public. So the main point that I'm trying to make here is even though the legal frameworks allow for data collection, it does not necessarily equate into transparency because there is no evidence of actual use. So finally, I would like to end with these slides with some recommendation that maybe for the next iteration of any research, the focus should not only be on data collection and publication, but also on actual data use by competent or law enforcement authorities where the PO information is not being made public by the country and or the public where information is publicly available. So I just want to circle back to what has already been mentioned by some of the earlier speakers on accessibility of data. It is not enough to just simply collect it. It is important to also ensure that it is in a format that would make it easily accessible, whether via APIs, whether via using data standards, because that is important in the downstream when we're talking about data use. So accessibility, making sure that that data is accessible becomes very, very important. So this also involves raising awareness and doing more capacity building activities, as what was mentioned by the colleague from OECD. And then finally, in terms of research, maybe try to examine the accessibility of BO data to relevant stakeholders. Although ideally, we would want to find a way to measure actual use of this data, that would be very difficult given the context of the research. So we feel that it is more objective to examine whether these stakeholders do in fact have access, what is the format in which that data is being presented, and whether there are mechanisms in place to ensure that accessibility. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily.
I just wanted to show my
thank
contact.
you. You have a wonderful talk, and you have share your experience. And thank you very much. And actually, I know the Open Global Data Barometer you do not have a Japan field. The Professor Noburo-san. Noburo-san, Professor Noburo-san.
Yes.
Noburo-san can be your contact person in the future. Okay. Yeah, he's very famous in Japan, a very important guy. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, the European people, and good afternoon, the Asian people. And one information, this is my card. I am in residency of Estonia.
Oh, really?
Really. About 3 years ago, but I have never updated so I think it expires. but I was in residency in Estonia, and I have a card of the residency. And today, this is one information. And today I would like to talk about the data application and the governance. The governance includes the platform for the data. Not only the open data, but also the any kind of data, such as industry data and personal data, or many kind of data. So I would like to talk about a general one, just update information of Japan. And this is the overall status of data initiative in Japan, then comparing with EU and the United States. And I think the data initiative, we have many layers, rule layers, data space layers, including business model or government policy level, and data platform tools or systems, and data models, and the quality layer, and architecture framework. This is a very conceptual one. And in Japan, we have many rules or laws for data. And secondly, in Japan, there are many initiatives for building data spaces. Some are very domain-specific data space, such as industry, mobility, health and medicine, agriculture, and public administration, and more. And another one is a cross-domain data infrastructure, such as Data EX. Data EX is my project. And also to build a data space, we need data platform tools or data platform systems. So in Japan, many systems we are developing. JADE, this is a national. This is created by a big national R&D project, and the Data EX. This is also my project. And also we are using the software tools in Europe. For example, the Fireware Orions or Eclipse Data Connector. And GB's Connect is in the Japanese government, the intercompany data platform and public service mesh. So we are developing initiative for tools or systems. And data model, we have in government GIF data model and data quality management initiative we have. And architecture framework, the conceptual one that GIF providing such kind of framework. And I think that the similar initiative, there are similar initiatives in EU and the United States. And I am very interested in, I am active in the data space and the data platform tool or system area or layers. And next slide is a much more precise one. This is the overall status of the data platform initiative in Japan. This has three layers. First layer, the upper layer, is a very domain-specific, application-specific data platform or data space. There are so many ones. The public data, open data platforms such as e-government, OGP, eStat, Plato is a city data, 3D data, open data, and X-Road, and local government open data, TDPF, Orden. This is a Osaka area. The Osaka local government are providing the Orden data platform, and the Tokyo Metropolitan local government are providing TDPF. And the Sapporo or Kochi or many local government providing the data platform or data spaces now. And the smart city, in Japan, the smart city is very, very popular, and the government are very active to support smart city. So in Japan, there are about 100 or 200 smart city projects now working. And the smart city, the Japan government are promoting that to use data platform in smart city. So they are promoting to introduce city operating system, city OS or urban operating system, including data platforms. So intra-city data exchange platform is distributed. Such kind of system is distributed from Japan government to each local government or companies. And also some private sectors and public sectors, such as industry, we have many data platform activity, agriculture, manufacturing industry, IVI, the geospatial data platform, GSpace, and disaster prevention or disaster alleviation, the SIP for D means the disaster, and the space data, TELUS, ODPT, the data platform for the transportation, and consortium for the promotion of transport infrastructure, very long English name. This is also the transportation data platform. The Community mass platform, there are many mass platforms, mobility as a service platforms, and Green by Digital Consortium. This is a carbon neutral related data platform. And battery supply chain data platform. This is very important because EU will start a new battery regulation. So we Japan industry are dealing with this new regulations. And DIAS is a academic data platform. So there are more other platforms, but everything I don't know. So and some. And below them, there are the domain-specific but inter-application platforms. For example, the VLED BODIC is government open data government platform, or public service mesh, GP Connect, EDC data exchange platform. This is a very, very general platform, but in each domains. And finally, the lower one is a cross-domain data exchange platform. In Japan, we are developing the data EX, and I'm in charge of developing this data EX. And the system is CADDE, CADDE. This was created in the SIP project. SIP project is the biggest Japan national funded R&D project. And this year we have finished to develop the SIP CADDE, and now we are in the stage of the social implementation of data EX using these CADDE systems. And next slide, we would like to show many examples of this data platform or data space project. This is open data, government level open data. Previously, the Japan government releasing the open data from data.go.jp, but now name changed into the data.egov.go.jp. This is a new Japan open data website, catalog website. About 22,000 data sets are published from this one. And as for local government in Japan, we have 1,788 local government in Japan. And now the 81% of Japan local government have issued the open data. So in Japan, there are so many open data catalogs, more than 1,000 public open data catalogs by local government. And this is a project of the public transportation open data, ODPT. And Plateau. Plateau is very, very popular in Japan now. The Plateau project is developing the 3D city map. So the all 3D data of building, and I think the whole Tokyo have a Plateau data, open data of the 3D urban data. And National Land Transport Data Platform. This is a federated data platform of public transportation and road and map or such kind of mobility related data platform by a national government. And this year, this is my project. We have a 5-year project developing the Japan mobility data space. In Japan, there are many small data platform or data spaces related to mobility. For example, the train data platform, the bus data platform, and the road, and the pedestrian, and the geography, and so many kind of data platforms. So we would like to integrate all of them and establish a Japan mobility data space. So I would like to build this data space in 5 years from this year. This is my new project. And SIP4D, this is a data platform for disaster prevention or disaster reduction in SIP project. SIP project is a national funded big R&D project. And WAGRI is a data platform for agriculture. So this data platform collecting the many data for the agriculture or plant or such kind of data. And this is my project, the JADA Green by Digital Consortium for calculating CO2 emission. Such kind of information is collected in this consortium. And TDPF, this is a very large platform by Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Tokyo Metropolitan Government is about 10% of Japan. So this has a very, very big open data and industry data, also personal data. Now we are building from since 2020. And in Japan, the largest city is Tokyo, and the second largest city is Osaka. So Osaka has also providing a big data platform, Orden. This is the Osaka Regional Data Exchange Network. So, and the east side is Tokyo, and the west side is Osaka, TDPF, and Orden. This is the two major local government data platform. And IOP, this is a local government data platform, but for the agriculture, because Kochi Prefecture is very active for the IoT-based agriculture. IoT-controlled greenhouse or such kind of IoT-based data-driven agriculture is very popular in Kochi Prefecture. So Kochi Prefecture are providing a data platform for Internet of Plants data platform. And also this is a fishery for data platform for fishery in Navras. This is also the Kochi Prefecture. And a data EX, this is my project. The previous one is everything is a domain specific one, and the data EX is a federation platform. All of these domain specific platform we would like to federate. So data EX is the only project for the cross domain data platform in Japan. And the next example is data applications. So in Japan, of course, there are many data usage applications, but in Japan, recently, the government are using open data or industry data for giving public residence services. And in smart city of Japan, the best practice of data application is collected in a document. The first one is the Open Data 100. This is, you can get this kind of example document from the website. And also the last month, Digital Agency have opened a catalog of service or system supporting good practice in digital implementation. This is a service, good best practice catalog of the smart city project in Japan. I think more than 100 examples are issued in this document. And the second one, public transportation. In Japan, public transportation is very active, and there are so many mobility as a service services. And this is based on the public transportation open data. So JR East, Tokyo Metro, or Tokyo Railway, Save Railway, JR West, so many companies are providing data services using public open transportation data. And the next example is cross-domain data usage practice. This is electricity smart meter data as using for the finding and preventing frailty. Frailty means just before the old people get very sick. Before them, the frailty is just before the such kind of sickness. So how to find the frailty is very important, and we are using the electricity smart meter data. So this is a cross domain, the electricity and some kind of yeah. And AI taxi, we are using the weather data or public transportation data for estimating the number of human flow. And we are providing such kind of information to taxi corporation, and taxi corporation will make some cars to such crowded areas. And this is the last example. This is vehicle trajectory result information map in disaster. So using this kind of map information, we can know which road is now usable and which is not usable in disaster time. So, and the next one is the international collaboration. International collaboration, for example, the DSA is my organization, the Data EX. We are collaborating with Fireware and the IDSA or GaiaX. And this year, DSA and my university, the University of Tokyo, will collaborate IDSA and establish a new organization, IDSA Japan Hub. Japan Hub means the hub coordinator and also the research laboratory in Japan. This is a new initiative for the collaboration with European activities. And this is a very important one. Last May in Takasaki, we had a G7 Digital and Technology Minister meeting. And in this meeting, our data community are proposing to DFFT initiative we have proposing the 11 issues to this meeting. And I think that this meeting will accept this proposal and making some kind of reflecting in some kind of report. And in this meeting, the most important progress is proposing IAP, Institutional Arrangement for Partnership. This is an organization or mechanism for collaborating globally for the data flow or data sharing. So many countries must collaborate with each other for DFFT data free flow with trust. So in this meeting, the Japan government was proposing the IAP. This is very important progress. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Noburo. And very interesting talk, and let us know the Japan status right now. I think it is a very good example for all of us. Anyone have the questions? Because we are a little run of time. And finally, the Secretary of AODP, Joanna, asks, we should have a group photo together. Joanna, please, probably everyone turn on your camera, please. And maybe we sit here. Okay, thank you, Pilar, and thank you, Rivera, and thank you, lots of people. Actually, we are online and offline, we have more than 30 people to join us together. Okay, Joanna, please take a photo, please. You take it. Is it okay? 1, 2, 3. It's okay? Joanna, it's okay?
Okay, thank you.
Finish?
Yes, one more. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I think such is kind of meeting we shall continue in the future, not only for the OGP, but I'm sorry to rush during the OGP time. Probably next time, Open Data, Global Data Barometer, we can co-work and co-work with OECD and also the European Union. European Union, your data strategy is our milestone in the future. Yeah, we hope we can move on for more cooperation in the future. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. See you in somewhere. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.